How would you like to increase your personal productivity every single day by watching more movies? That sounds kind of crazy, doesn't it? That's one of the things we'll be talking about today, right here on the program. I'm TJ Walker. This is the Habit Influencer. This is the one program anywhere on the internet that comes to you live every single day, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3, to talk about habits, the formulation of good habits, and how you can have personal development in a more effective way. So thank you so much for joining me today. Your time is valuable. I want to say a special hello to our friends on TikTok. Clarice is with us, Maggie, and the Cussing Christian is with us today on TikTok as well, plus Alex. And we're joined by our friends on YouTube, Facebook, and about a dozen other platforms. I'll be taking your questions today. We have a couple of very specific prepared segments, but first, this jumped out at me in the news. This was a story about the 50 best feel-good movies of all time. And the reason I was interested in that is in my studies of habit formation and productivity, what I have found is that the happier you are as a human being, the easier it is to do good work, to be productive, to not procrastinate. If you are depressed, in a bad mood, it is so much easier to be at your desk, pretend to be doing work, but you're going through your spam folder. You are just checking to see if there's any new messages on LinkedIn. Yeah, I understand. You have to do those things some of the time. But if the bulk of your most productive time in a day is just responding to email, checking social media, cleaning out your spam filter, you're not fooling anyone, and you shouldn't be fooling yourself. You are robbing yourself of productivity. Now, I've found this to be true in my own personal life. If I am happier, I will be more productive. I will be less inclined to procrastinate. I will be more inclined to go through my to-do list and to not push something off the calendar that is due today at 10 and putting it till Wednesday at 10. That's why I do think it's important to watch movies that make you feel good. Movies and watching video and TV, that gets bashed a lot. I know when I was a kid, my own father said, stop watching the boob tube. Yes, many people, arguably most people, in many Western countries spend too many hours watching TV. In so many homes and offices, people watch 6-7 hours a day. That's too much, especially if it's mindless news chatter about negativity. But to watch something specifically to put you in a good mood for a set amount of time, I think is an excellent use of your time for part of the day. Like anything, you can abuse it. You can watch 10 hours of movies a day. That's no good. You might be happy, but you'll probably be on the street unemployed. That's no good either. But I wanted to share with you this list, and this comes from something called happierhuman.com. By the way, everything I reference today, I give you the source material. I'm not posting on every single website, and those of you on TikTok might not see that, but I am posting it in the video description on the YouTube channel. We are broadcasting live today, streaming live from YouTube. So if you type in TJ Walker Personal Development, you will see my channel on YouTube if you're not already there, and you can see the links to this article as well. In this particular article, it was put together by a film critic who lists The Birdcage, starring Robin Williams, as the #1 feel-good movie. I do remember the movie. I remember liking it, but I don't really remember anything about it, other than the fact that it was filmed at a building right next to where I lived in South Beach. I lived there a quarter of a century ago, and the movie was shot, I think, just a couple of years after I had lived there. So it was kind of fun seeing places I had been sitting and having lunch every day for years. The second movie, top movie of all time, according to this critic, to just make you feel good, School of Rock, starring Jack Black. I have seen the movie and recently went and saw the Broadway show with my family. The third movie Love Actually. And I have seen it, but I frankly don't remember anything about it. I'd love to know from you, what is a movie that just makes you feel good? If you're having a down day and tomorrow is a really big day and you've got to be at your top, sometimes rather than reading and rereading that PowerPoint deck another 2 hours the night before the big presentation, it's far better to relax a little and enjoy a movie that makes you feel good. Or what I do more often, I watch stand-up comedy just for an hour. That's how I like to feel good and get in an up state leading into a good night's sleep and a productive day the next time. We're going to go to Facebook in just one moment. Clarice, we mentioned Clarice. We've had a few other people joining us. And Clarice says, nothing I say or do experience creates tasting, results happiness. I'm not quite it is my reality. I read it out of order. Excuse me, Clarice. Let me just go back up and share some of our comments from the TikTok platform from one of our viewers today, Clarice. I'm productive when clear, present, and operating, and it empowers reality of my creation. If my reality is disempowering, nothing I do or say creates lasting results, happiness, or productive. 50 characters limit. Yes, it is tough typing on some of the social media platforms when you are limited to characters. Clarice, I think what you're saying is if you are in an unhappy environment, unpleasant environment, it's hard to be creative. If you are in a pleasant environment, then it's easier to be creative. I agree completely. And that's why it is, I didn't used to be a follower of this, but that is why today I now have as a habit. Every single day, I completely clean up my desk in my TV studio, in my main office. I try to keep the house extraordinarily clean and tidy. Now, much of the credit, it's not just me. My wife is very clean too, but especially for my desk, my office, my studio, I make sure there's not a single scrap of paper sitting around by the end of the day, because that makes me more productive when I go in the next day. Clarice, if I've missed any of the niche there, then go ahead and let me know and add another character. Quick note to Marceau, that didn't count yet, so that wasn't that was not a segment. Talking to my producer who's in Brooklyn today. Let's go over to Facebook and see how our friends are doing there. Peggy writes in, happy Monday. Peggy, thanks for being with us. Always happy to be with you. Hope your course is going well in the online course you're creating. Again, feel free to share with us in the community here once your course has gone live. Peggy also writes, working on my next book on effective communication. And we also have Chung, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this, Chung-Young Kandek has joined. Let us know where you're from. Peggy, I think I know where you're from. You're from the United States and I believe Texas. But our next friend who's written in, let me know where you're from. If I had to guess, well, let me not go there. State what city and country you're from. We have a very eclectic international community for this show. We're not just U.S. based, although I am here in New York in the U.S., so there will be sometimes a disproportionate number of references to U.S.-based people, pop culture items, and news items. I do want to hear from all of you and share your perspectives on what's going on in your world too. So part of what I try to do, and if you do want to nominate a particular movie before we go to the next segment, feel free to post a comment, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. We try to monitor every single one of those platforms so that your feedback can be heard. And by the way, special hello to our friends on Instagram today, because you should be seeing me looking at you. In the past week, if you were stopping by this show, you kind of saw a weird side angle. We're still working out all the connections and the technology on that. So Marcel, let me know the first time we do have a friend from Instagram with any comments or questions. I would like to give them a little just a little bit of extra attention today. So thanks so much. Okay. Part of what I want to do in this show is be, frankly, a little different than what a lot of hosts do. You know, a lot of people like to come on as the expert. I'm the all-knowing guru, and they only want to talk about the successes they've had with their clients. Well, you know, I occasionally do that too. I don't want to sound like I'm immune to that. But I also want you to know I'm making myself a guinea pig here. When we're talking about how to build habits, typically there's no piece of advice I'm giving to you that I haven't tried myself. And I'm not going to generally recommend something unless it has worked for me already. So one thing I wanted to share with you is a simple little exercise, tiny exercise that I do every single day. I tell myself this in my Selfie Speak program every day. It's just an audio recording of myself telling myself to do a particular thing. And then I have a checklist on my phone. Here's the thing. This is going to sound silly to some of you. It's going to sound stupid, trivial, but it's a tiny little thing that gets my day on the right track. And here it is. I simply tense every muscle in my body in as hard a way as possible for just 10 to 15 seconds. Now, if my daughter walks by or my wife walks by, the first few times they saw this, like, are you okay? They thought I was having a stroke or something. No. But it's just a great way to get your muscles revved up, get a little energy in your body, and then once you stop, it is incredibly relaxing. Those of you familiar with some meditation techniques know that this is a staple of meditation. I also meditate, but that's not why I do this. It's just a quick way of giving my muscles a tiny workout. Now, there's a great deal of coverage in the habits world about mini habits, small habits, tiny. In fact, I'll be talking to you later in the show about a brand new book that's getting tremendous publicity all over the world. This is Tiny Habits by B.J. Fogg, a psychologist and expert in habits from Stanford University. I'll be talking about that book later. But this is a small habit. It only takes 10 seconds. What do you have to lose? It makes me feel better, gives my muscles, some of those muscles, that's about the only workout you can do in a day, even if you're doing other exercise and running. So that's why I like that. It's just clutching every single muscle, tensing every single muscle as hard as you can for just 10, 15 seconds. Is this going to make you an Olympic athlete? No. Will this make you lose 40 pounds of unsightly fat? No. But it's another piece of the puzzle to get my day going and a part of my daily habits. You might want to try it as well. Let's check in with some of our other visitors. Maggie Unorthodox has joined in. Chewy Force has joined us from TikTok. Maggie writes in from North Carolina. Good to hear you. I'm from North Carolina, from Charlotte. Maggie is from from Shelby, about an hour from Charlotte, where I grew up. Drove through Shelby many times. I certainly remember back in the 1970s, Shelby, I believe, was one of the first cities to proudly proclaim to be an all-American city. They had these big signs everywhere. And I'm of a certain age where I remember one of their most popular favorite sons, David Thompson, one of the greatest college basketball players to ever play the game. And he also played for NC State. I see we also have user 865 has joined us. And Don't Follow Me. Don't Follow Shay has joined. And I'll try not to follow you, Don't, but if I have, please forgive me. I am curious, you can, on the TikTok app platform, you can in fact just put a setting so that people have to request to follow you, and then they can't automatically follow you. And then others just sometimes let someone follow them and then say, stop following me. So I'm never quite sure about the protocol there, but it is a fabulous platform. I continue to learn more and more about it every single day. I'm TJ Walker. I want to thank you for joining me if you've just signed on. This is a live program where I answer your questions and talk to you about personal development issues, specifically how to create new habits, how to create better habits. I also want to welcome so many of my Udemy students and other online students from around the globe. I teach habits and personal development courses and communication courses on about 50 platforms all over the world. The one platform where I have the most students is udemy.com. By the way, they're the sponsor of the show today. I don't mean the corporation, but my own habits course that's on Udemy is our sponsor for the day. So if you're looking for a more systematic approach and an actual course to build your habits, if you go to udemy.com, type in TJ plus habits, you will find that course. So Marceau, I'm seeing a bunch of sort of flicking around. Was there anything there you were trying to draw my attention to?
No, I'm just setting up the Instagram comments.
Okay, great. And again, we're very happy to have our friends from Instagram joining us today. Today they're getting it to look at it like everyone else does, where I'm looking at you in the eye. I hope by tomorrow our good friends at TikTok will be able to share that experience too, because right now you have sort of an awkward thing where the people who watch me on TikTok I'll just show it for everyone else. I am streaming this through my cell phone on a tripod. So that's how the people, a little act of transparency there, that's how the people from TikTok are watching this show through a cell phone. So that's what's going on there. So in a moment, I want to talk about a very specific subject of habits of the financially wealthy. I want to go into a little more detail. And this will be our first sort of big topic of the show. And Marceau, this is where I'm going to need you to demarcate the 9-minute mark. But before I do, is there anyone else you wanted me to recognize?
No. Very good.
Topic A, habits of the financially wealthy. Caveat, anytime you hear someone toss out a phrase like that, you see a headline like that, watch out. It's likely to be clickbait. It's likely to be someone trying to sell you something to take your money. Well, let me tell you right now, I don't want your money, at least not right now as it relates to this. I want you to just listen, think, and share. There are certain habits that the financially wealthy do differently. There's one habit in particular that I think does not get enough attention. You don't need me to tell you the financially wealthy save money every month. You don't need me to tell you a lot of financially wealthy invest in real estate and in assets that are creating income. Robert Kiyosaki has done a fantastic job of telling people that for decades. Where I think people really don't understand the core strength of the financially wealthy is how much money the financially wealthy invest back in themselves. Now, historically, this was done by lots of fancy degrees at places like Harvard and Stanford and Columbia, Oxford. Historically, this was done by jetting across the world to Davos and various conferences to hear great lecturers. But increasingly, what the wealthy are doing are exactly what anyone can do. In fact, what you're doing right now, and that is to educate themselves. Their attitude towards education is not simply get a degree, check the box, and then you're set for life. No. The really wealthy people in the world, for the most part, unless they are just born billionaires and they don't care, but people who create wealth and build wealth and want to see it grow, continually invest in themselves. This can be in the form of books, ebooks, listening to podcasts. Sometimes it takes no money at all to simply listen to a podcast. Once you have the infrastructure of a cell phone, it doesn't require a lot of money. It could be an expensive coaching program or mentorship program or virtual MBA. It could be that, but it doesn't have to be. But unlike a lot of people, the wealthy don't just continue to learn for the sake of learning. That's a part of what they do, and they love to learn. But a part of what they do also is to learn more about what they are best at, so they can continue to get better and better and better. And they can continue to charge more in whatever it is they do. I don't mean to suggest that all wealthy people are consultants billing by the hour. It could be that they are real estate investors. It could be that they are angel investors in startups, high-tech startups. But when they study more and more and more, sometimes an angel investor might look at 1,000 business plans before saying yes to one. The 999 you said no to were an essential part of your education to enable you to know which one to say yes to. In my experience, when I'm around people who are extraordinarily wealthy, yes, they have a good time. And some of my clients have 400-foot yachts and own baseball teams, but everything isn't fun and games all the time. They do have fun. They have intense fun. You look at someone like Richard Branson. He seems to have a lot of fun on islands and ballooning, but they're always learning. Bill Gates prides himself in reading a couple of very intense, long, detailed books every single week. It's not that he needs to make more money. He's already, depending on the day, one of the top 2 or top 5 wealthiest people in the world. But he's doing it to get even better at what he does. Now he's in the stage of his life where he's trying to give away his money to make the maximum impact on his money. So he wants to make more, not for himself, but for humanity. And I realize some people don't like him, and you may think that's a puff piece for him. I'm not trying to shill for Bill Gates, but he's clearly not doing all this reading to just make more money for himself. So my number one challenge to you would be to figure out how can you allocate more time every single day to learn more about some specific skill you have. It may be broadly learning something, but what can you do? In my own life, I try to consume books 3 different ways every single way. I try to read one book every single day on Blinks or InstaRead, and these are short abridged books. I realize some people may think that's cheating, but I read at least one book on that each day. I also listen to an abridged audiobook every single day, and I also read a paper book every single day. I don't finish an entire paper book every single day. In fact, I'll be talking to you in a minute about this book, Tiny Habits, the latest book that's really made a splash in the whole world of habits. And I'm halfway through this. I'm really taking my time because there's so many good nuggets here. I'll be sharing with you some of those nuggets shortly. So that is really the number one thing I think that's different about the wealthy when it comes to how they think, how it relates to their own finances. They are constantly reinvesting in themselves, their knowledge, their ability to learn, their ability to stay at a higher level of the economic food chain. We live in an era where artificial intelligence is destroying job after job after job. It's not just taxi drivers who've lost their jobs to the artificial intelligence running Uber, and those drivers are then putting them out of business. It's happening in industry after industry. Easy stuff becomes a commodity. Easy skills, easy jobs are either going to vanish because of computers, or the compensation gets lower and lower and lower every year because there's more competition coming in from computers and artificial intelligence. You don't suffer from that if you're constantly trying to figure out how to do harder things, more difficult things. So that is my number one challenge to you if you aspire to be wealthy, is to figure out how can you continue to learn more and more and more every day in as wide a path as possible, but also in a way that helps you specialize. I like to read all kinds of things. Could be news about NFL coaches, and I don't even care about football. It could be stories about cooking. It could be anything, but I'm trying to get better and better and better at one particularly hard skill right now. I like to challenge myself, test myself. Right now, the biggest challenge in my life is I'm trying to do a daily live stream show about personal development on more than a dozen platforms all at the same time all over the world. So you may be watching me today on YouTube. You may be watching on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. This is a relatively hard thing to do. There are very few people doing personal development shows live for 2 hours a day on a gazillion platforms. Doesn't mean that I'm special or I deserve a reward for it, but at least I'm trying. I'm trying to do something that technically, there's a lot of technical issues. It's hard to do. And this particular skill is not going to be taken over by a computer anytime soon. At some point it could be, but right now I'm far enough ahead that it can't be taken over by a computer, and that is why I am doing it. I'm trying to stay ahead of the curve. That is the number one secret of the financially wealthy. I'll be sharing with you later tips today, other sources, other blogs, other habit resources, what the wealthy are doing. But that's my take. I'd like to hear from you. Again, I'm TJ Walker. I'm the Habit Influencer. This is the Habit Influencer Show. And the origin of that name is not that I am the all-knowing guru and I'm going to lay my hands on you and make you perfect. No. The reason we call this Habit Influencer is I'm trying to teach myself and you how to influence your own habits. That's what it's about. So much of my methodology is about you figuring out the lifestyle you want. What are your dreams? What are your aspirations? And then really isolating what are the daily habits that will lead you to your ultimate goals. And then what are the techniques that will help you reach your goals? That's what it's all about. Take a moment to say hello to some of our new folks who've joined us. I see that it looks like Bachman 45 has joined us. Positive Gal 10 has joined us on TikTok as well. And we have a few others. I can't tell, Marceau, what platform this is from. Is this Instagram, Marceau?
Yeah, it's Instagram, yeah, on the screen right now.
Okay, and so I want to say hello to Fik Shirani has joined us. By the way, let us know where you are today, what city, what country. It's always nice to know where people are from. Benjamin has joined us. Sai MBA. Sai, great to see you again. Sai had posted some very provocative questions last week. Glad you're back. Sai says, this is Sai from Hyderabad again. By the way, I told my friends from Hyderabad, they came over for dinner Saturday night and brought some of the most fantastic biryani. It just makes my mouth water thinking about it. So I was telling them about you on Saturday night. So you have not been forgotten. How are you? How's your weekend? It was great. Well, I guess I anticipated your question. Diehard TJ fans from India. India is a fantastic place. Now, I have been there. The first time I was there was about 15 years ago. I've had 3 trips to India and got to see the Taj Mahal, Mumbai, New Delhi, all the historic sites, Bangalore. And most recently, and I was there about 6 years ago, I can't tell you who I was working with. Let's just say some of the most prominent families in the political world in India were quite gracious to me and had a wonderful time no matter what city I was. It could have been Bhopal, places all over I got to see. Truly an extraordinary country. And for anyone in the West, the United States, Canada, Europe, if you're looking for a vacation that takes you completely out of your normal world, different food, different music, different culture, different monkeys running on the street, India is a fabulous place to go. I don't think you'll be disappointed. So thanks for all of our friends joining us on Instagram. By the way, Sai, does it make a difference to you that you can see me now where I'm looking right at you? We're trying to improve our technology on a daily basis. So now we've hooked up the Instagram folks to see us through the main feed. So if you do notice any difference, let me know. Let's go to Facebook now and check in on some of her friends there. Sonia Gozman, one of my old friends, has written in, I'm retired, so I don't think about changing my habits would help me financially at this time. Hey, if you are retired and you have the money you need to pay your bills and live the lifestyle, then in my mind, you're already rich. You're already wealthy. Wealth is a concept. It's not something that you can just pinpoint and say, this person's wealthy, this person isn't. There are billionaires in the world who don't feel wealthy because they are coveting their neighbor's 500-foot yacht. They have a 300-foot yacht, but they feel poor because their next door neighbor has a 500-foot yacht. If that is your mentality, you'll never be wealthy. You'll always be poor. So part of it is figuring out, how have you met your actual financial needs? Do you feel you have abundance in your life? Or do you feel constant stress because of finances? Unfortunately, most of the world does feel financial stress. I can't speak for every country, but certainly here in the United States, a gigantically huge portion of the populace has less than $1,000 in savings. So they're only a couple flat tires away or one small health emergency away from being homeless or pushed into bankruptcy. So if you are retired, Sonia, and you've worked hard your life and you can meet your need, then you already are wealthy of sorts. I'm not wealthy compared to some of my Wall Street friends who made $10 million a year. But I can tell you, I feel wealthy in the sense that there's really nothing I want in terms of cars, homes, possessions that I don't already own. Do I have more financial goals? Sure. But as far as do I have more wants than I can supply? No. I'll tell you where I feel wealthiest is when I walk through a mall with my family and I realize there's really nothing here I want. You may be different. I'm not particularly a collector. I got rid of nice watches I have and I just have an inexpensive Apple Watch. It's only a few $100s. So everyone is different. You've got to figure out what's important to you. But Sonia, thanks so much for joining us. Asil Karishad says hello, greetings from Pakistan. I've not yet been to Pakistan, but this sounds like a cliche. Some of my best friends are from Pakistan. My next door neighbor is from Pakistan, and we are going to be launching a new joint venture online course this week, most likely Wednesday. The the co-instructor of my newest course on Udemy. This is a course on complete PowerPoint presentation skills and how to make every aspect of PowerPoint. He is from Pakistan. And I've had wonderful relationships with especially communications consultants in the Middle East, all over the world, who are from Pakistan. So happy to hear from you today. Also, Messi Daniel has written in and is sending me blessings, so thank you so much for that. Sonia is writing in from Phoenix, Arizona, which is a great place for retirees. The cost of living a little less expensive than New York City and some of the big cities, although it does get quite hot there, I understand, in the summer. Janan Vidyaka writes in as well and sends blessings. Thanks so much. And by the way, let us know where you're from. If you haven't said so in previous days, always nice to hear where people are from. And Eric, if I didn't recognize you yet on TikTok, thanks for being with us today. To any of my friends on TikTok, it says Bad Meat has joined us. Poppy has joined us. Modu has joined us. Really happy so many of our friends have joined us on TikTok today. Any questions you have about habit acquisition, personal development, or communication, please just post it there, and I'm happy to spend some of our time today. Let's switch over to YouTube, see what the community is doing there. Sai Krishna writes, this is Sai from India. How's your weekend? Oh, I'm sorry, I already addressed that one. Did we have another one that I missed from YouTube?
No, that was it.
Okay, great. So lots more to come on the show today. We have a number of exciting topics. Before I get into the next sort of official big topic, I did want to give you a preview. If you go to Amazon and type in habits, you will see between 50,000 and 100,000 books. You probably don't want to read all of them. I'm fascinated by habits, but I don't even want to read 100,000 books on habits. So I try to read the very best ones, the old ones, the classics, but also the new ones. This is one, you heard me mention it earlier in the show, by an author, B.J. Fogg. It's The Tiny Habits, Small Changes That Change Everything. This is, I would say, one of the top 3 books on habits in the last 10 years. The first one, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg of the New York Times. The second book, Atomic Habits by James Clear. And this one is kind of the third one of the triumvirate, I guess if you would call it, Tiny Habits by B.J. Fogg. He is a researcher and has apparently a huge department at Stanford University and has put about 40,000 people through his training programs. I am, full disclosure, I'm halfway through this book. I just got it and I've been soaking up. I put a link to this book if you want to buy it from Amazon. I'm not an affiliate. I'm not trying to make money off of you from this, although I may in the future. But if you want to figure out how to buy this easily, you can just go to Amazon. You can also go to my YouTube page, and you'll see in the description of the course show today. One of the things I think is fascinating that he put in this book is the role of reward. Now, other habits experts talk about this as well, but to me, he delves into it in a richer, more nuanced, more understandable way than other people who've written about habits. He says, like a lot of people, it's a myth to say you have to do something every day for 2 weeks or 21 days or 66 days to make it a habit. If the reward is intense enough, you only have to do something once. He gives the example of Uber and how he'd been using taxis his whole life. The first time he pushed the button on his phone for Uber, a car shows up as if it were a magic carpet. It was clean, it was efficient, the driver was not on the cell phone. Everything seemed better. He didn't have to go out on the street and wave, he didn't have to wait in line. The car was cleaner. It was just such a dramatically better experience for him than a tattoo. Excuse me, not a tattoo, a taxi. And that's what made it so powerful for him. So what he said, and I can relate to this because the same thing happened to me. He used Uber once. The experience was so overwhelmingly powerful. It was such a reward to his senses and his pocketbook because it was less expensive than a taxi. It instantly formed a habit. So if you're trying to form a habit, you've got to spend a lot more time thinking about how can you give yourself a reward. This is a very powerful concept because so many of us, I think, are used to thinking of you've got to eat your vegetables and you got to go to the gym and work out and sweat and be tired we think of it as drudgery, or you better do this, or you're just going to get punished. You've got to think in terms of actually rewarding yourself. That's what will make it a habit. And this applies in so many other aspects of like good and bad. Obviously, and I've never done, I have taken Ubers, I've never done heroin, but obviously some people do heroin. The instant reward is so intense and so powerful, apparently it feels so good, people become instantly addicted. They have a new habit, a heroin habit. I'm certainly not advocating you try that. But it does show, again, sort of the fallacy of this thinking of you must do something 21 days in a row or 66 times in a row. No one said gosh, I've done heroin once. Let me do it 20 more times so I can build a habit. No, it was instant. So think about how you can reward yourself. One thing is to give yourself a tiny, tiny bit of pure, high-grade chocolate. Now, if you're doing that all day long and you're rewarding yourself for exercising or sticking to a diet, obviously that can be counterproductive. But if you have one or two habits you're trying to build and you're doing them only a couple of times a week, it may be that a tiny, tiny little piece of chocolate might, in fact, be an excellent incentive for you, an excellent reward. This book changed my thinking. I used to just put on my to-do list, if I did a particular task, as I mentioned earlier, I have a daily task of, I just tense every single muscle in my whole body for 10 seconds. Last week you heard me talk about how I start every day just doing 20 jumping jacks. It takes 20 seconds. I used to just put a Y for yes, I did it. I don't do that anymore. Now I put a W for win. Yes, I'm winning at this habit. It's a subtle little thing. It sounds cheesy. It sounds trite. Sounds gimmicky. But guess what? We're human beings. We fall for gimmicks sometimes. I'm susceptible to it. You're susceptible to it. So by me telling myself I'm a winner, I won today on that habit, makes me feel good. This morning, I did my pull-ups. Now, I am only doing 4 pull-ups a day, but 3 weeks ago I was only doing 1 pull-up. I got to put the W next to today's date because I won at the pull-up game based on my standards. I had done 3 yesterday. I only wanted to do 4. That was a significant jump for me. That's 33% increase. So that's a win for me. Is that going to get me to the Olympics? No, but it's a lot more likely to get me to do my pull-ups tomorrow. So I urge you, give real thought to how you can build into your daily life ways of giving yourself intense or at least mild rewards, ways of making yourself feel good, because that's what will take an action and turn it into a habit. And we really, really want these for the good habits we're after. I'm TJ Walker. I want to thank you for joining me. We have a lot of time, a lot of stuff coming up, a lot more great content and topics here. But remember, this is interactive. It's not just me lecturing to you for a couple of hours. So if you have an issue you want to bring up that relates to habits, personal development, or communication, let me know. I'm here for you. If you are one of my online students and you have a question about anything dealing with one of the courses, consider this the professor's weekly office hours. I'm here for you. You can ask any question whatsoever. Special hello to our friends who've just joined us on TikTok. I see, looks like our Rhino Cowboy has joined us, and I think you were with us last week. Thanks for stopping by. Eric has joined us, Ellen, as well as H. Layfield has joined us, and Moda has joined us, too, all on the TikTok platform. We have a few other friends who've joined us on Facebook today. Asma writes in, and Asma, one of our great students and a great personal development leader in her own right from India, has joined us. I follow your daily motivational videos on Instagram through TikTok. You're really a habit influencer. And she used the hashtag habit changer. Thank you. Well, Asma, thank you so much. And thanks for being a great student. Here's the difference between people who ultimately become successful, in my view, and those who just waste their time. You've probably heard a lot about how online training isn't really worth much because something like 98% of people never finish a course. And that's often true, but there's nothing preventing you from finishing a course. Asma is a perfect example of someone who actually is trying to learn and benefiting and improving herself because she signed up for a few of my courses. She didn't do what most people do, which is just kind of sit back and watch a video. She then did the homework, practiced speaking on video, posted it, let me critique it, and the others in the community critique it. If you want to be a better public speaker, presenter, communicator, CEO, spokesperson, you need to speak frequently and you need to get feedback from others, even when the feedback hurts. I've had some hurtful feedback in just the last day. I'm going to tell you about it in a little while. But first, let's go to our friends on Instagram. Okay, on Instagram, Sai writes in, I am working on software skills as a software skill trainer in a company. I left the company. I wanted to get started as an independent trainer and how to get clients to start my training. That is the single most important part of the puzzle if you want to become a trainer. Training itself is easy compared to getting training clients. And a lot of people are confused by this. I encounter people frequently who say, oh, TJ, I'm starting my own training company or my own PR firm or something. And then they proceed to tell me that they are designing their logo, getting their LLC established, getting their post office box, getting their letterhead designed. All of those things are a complete, utter waste of time. The number one thing you need to think about if you want to become a trainer or a successful freelancer is how do you get paying customers? So, Sai, I would say to you, first thing, look at your entire database of anyone you've ever worked with. Let them know what you are doing. Ask them what their needs are. Call them on the phone. I realize that's heresy to a lot of people today under 40. How could you possibly call someone? That's crazy talk. I can only text. It's very hard to get people to give you substantial consulting contracts over a text. And substantial can vary depending on what country you're in or what your expectations are. But I've never seen someone just text in a request for a proposal. I text back and then they are wiring tens of thousands of dollars to me. It requires phone conversations, talking to people, talking to them through Skype, talking to them over the phone, ideally meeting with them face to face. So you've got to figure out how to get in front of people. I would also recommend that you spend some time every single day creating unique content in your niche. When I started my public speaking media training company, I had the luxury and, in hindsight, the good fortune to start my company during a horrible recession. It was 2001. There was a dot-com meltdown. 9/11 was about to happen. And I frankly didn't have a lot of business, but I had time. I also had time because I was so poor, I couldn't go out and socialize, go out to dinner, go on dates. With that time, I spent some time every single day writing tips, information, snippets about public speaking and media training. In fact, my first book was just 1,001 Ways to Wow the Media and Speaking Audiences. Just one sentence, one-liners basically. And I had researched every other book in the library. There wasn't any way of reading online books back then. And I just came up with a book, and I used that as content for a newsletter that I sent out every week. So, Sai, if you're not sending out a newsletter every single week, you're already losing. If you're not creating content in a form of a blog post, a YouTube video, or a TikTok video, or Instagram video every day, you're not using your time properly. The hardest thing for any trainer is to have anyone in the world know who they are, to make them want to reach out to you. And the days of just picking up the phone and cold calling, which I did 20 years ago, you can't do that anymore because no one's going to answer a phone. If they're not expecting your phone number, boom, they do what I do, which is delete or go to mailbox and then hit delete. So no one's going to call. Cold calling just doesn't work for the most part. No one's going to take your call. That's why you need to be reaching out to the people you care about. And also, don't just create content. If there's 10 companies you care about the most in your city you'd love to work for, you need to be following all the leaders from that company in their own social media feeds, whether it's Twitter, whether it's LinkedIn, and start making insightful comments about their stuff before you ask them to look at your stuff. That's how I would do it if I were you. And forgive me if you told me, if you're already in my Udemy course on Train the Trainer, then I think keep going through that course. You're going to find a tremendous amount of information that's just about how to market yourself in that business. And since you made me talk about it, anyone who writes to me today and wants the book, this was it's my second book, but my first book in the personal development realm about 20 years ago, 1,001 Ways to Wow the Media and Speaking Audiences. If you send me an email today, I'll send you that book for free. My email is tj@tjwalker.com. Pretty simple email. But I don't sell a lot of copies of that book. It's 20 years old and it's really just tips. But I think it's a good example because you'll read this book and you may get a few good tips. But I also think that you can look at this book and say, how hard was this? If he could do that, I could do 1,001 tips book for my own specialty, for my own training niche. It doesn't have to be 1,001. It could be 101. It could be 10. There's no magic number. And it doesn't have to be in a book. It could be just in an article. In fact, one I want to share with you today is just that. It's top 10 tips on how to write. And this is from a writer and a blogger I do like and admire and respect named James Altucher. I always think I'm botching his name, so forgive me if I didn't get that right. But I do want to share with you some snippets from his particular case. But before I do that, I do want to recognize a couple of other people who have posted comments. Peggy writes, where is the best place on places to find current news or findings in your niche? Mine being communication. I guess, Peggy, yours is communication. I am a big fan. This makes me sound old. Many people don't use it anymore. RSS feeds. So every day I look at an RSS feed that shows, and I use Feedly, and that shows me a dozen or two articles that relate to habits. Something else I do, and it's not particularly high tech, it's nothing you couldn't have done 20 years ago, is I just go to Google and I type in habits and I search just for what is in the news category within the last 24 hours. And that gives me the newest stuff, the latest stuff from the widest range of sources. But Peggy, if you want to really be an expert on communication, my biggest recommendation of all to you would be create your own content every single day and post it on YouTube, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on TikTok. The best way in this rapidly changing world to stay on top of things for the communications world is to actually be in it. When I was a kid, and I think perhaps when you were a kid, communication, that was just owned by a few billionaires, and each town had 3 or 4 TV stations, 1 newspaper, and a billionaire from out of town who owned it all. And if you could follow what happened in that newspaper or ABC News, you were up on the communications game. It's not like that anymore. Communications is so diffuse. There are just millions of communication companies because every single blogger is essentially a communication company. But if you want to become good, even great at communication, you've got to study the masters and you have to be where they are. When I look to someone I really want to learn from with respect to communication, I study Gary Vaynerchuk. You've heard me mention him before. He's kind of the poster child for social media success. Nobody does it better than he does. Nobody's in more places. Nobody creates more content on a daily basis. I would recommend his books, Crush It and Crushed It, the follow-up. He has about 5 New York Times best-selling books. But more than reading books, follow him on Instagram and on TikTok and Facebook and YouTube and Instagram. That's really where you'll learn. Look at the people who are most cutting edge. And you may want to follow somebody that you can't stand. You may think Kim Kardashian is the ultimate sign of society unraveling. Look at her stuff anyway. You'll learn about how savvy media operators use different media and to reach a lot of different audiences and to reach mass audiences. So that would be my recommendation, Peggy. Marceau, did we have another comment on Facebook? I feel like I saw some below that and missed that. So, oh, that was from you. Great.
You're caught up.
Okay, great. By the way, if I do miss your questions, or if you are watching this show on demand later and the show is already aired, feel free to post your comments. We still look at all the comments. And if I don't get to your question today, you posted it after the show, I'll most likely answer your questions tomorrow, whenever the next show is. So if you see it on a Friday and you post your question Friday night, it will likely be Monday night before I answer it. And want to say hello to a few more of our friends who have joined us from TikTok. TikTok, a very exciting platform. And I'm happy to say that since I launched on TikTok about 3 months ago, I think even today, I've done a video every single day on TikTok. They're only 15 seconds long. Sometimes I do a few more. But the response, the interaction, the engagement from TikTok is fantastic. It is exciting. Convention, and Peggy, if you're not on TikTok, I urge you to do so. I think we cross-pollinated you on TikTok last week with some of our colleagues there. But the interesting thing about TikTok is it has 500 million, that's right, 500 million regular users every month on TikTok. So it's about the third or fourth largest one in the world now. It's far surpassed Twitter. Here in the United States, everybody's heard of Twitter. A lot of people have still, I find, never heard of TikTok, or they've never been to TikTok. So it is essentially virgin territory. There's a lot more opportunity. It is the one place where you could go on, have literally 0 followers or 2 followers, post a video and it go viral, and you have 10,000, 20,000. In my first month, I had one video get 80,000 views. I haven't had any video on Facebook or YouTube hit 80,000 views in a long time. So that's one thing I think that's extremely exciting about the TikTok platform. We're coming up to the top of the hour. We are going to take a short break, but fear not, I will be back. We're only going to step away for a couple of minutes. We have a lot to continue with in hour 2. I have some prepared segments. I specifically am going to want to talk to you about, I'll share with you some of our viewer mail, what's going on there. And I also want to talk to you about more on some of my favorite books and other top news stories. We're going to lose Instagram in just a minute. If you're watching us on Instagram, just wait for a couple of minutes. Come back in about 2 or 3 after the hour. We will reconnect. Instagram is one of these platforms where I guess they don't like long-winded people like me going on for hours, so they limit the window to 1 hour for live. So we will be back with Instagram and everyone else at about 2 or 3 minutes past the hour. I'm TJ Walker. Thanks so much for joining me at hour 1 of The Habit Influencer. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
This is a Chucky Beat production.
Welcome back to Hour 2 of The Habit Influencer. I'm your host, TJ Walker. Thanks for joining me. This is the place, as far as I know, the one place in the entire internet where you can actually ask questions of a real expert and have a conversation about anything and everything related to building habits. And there, I think you just saw the scene for the people from Marceau. Is that the scene that people see if they're watching on TikTok, or what do we just see there? Well, Marceau is my colleague joining us from Brooklyn today.
Let's have to switch it over.
Okay, great. Well, so this is the sixth day of our daily show. We're still working out some of the technology. Very happy that our friends on Instagram can now see us live through our main camera, our main feed. And within the next couple of days, our good friends on TikTok should be able to join us as well. Right now, you're having to look at me sort of look off on space. So I apologize for that, but we are trying to make that better every single day. And to make up for it, TikTok friends, you'll go to the head of the list. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for the show, I will come to you the second I see them. So thank you so much for your indulgence. I mentioned before the hour how I believe that writing is key. By the way, Sai, thanks for writing. Sai just wrote to me an email, took me up on the offer of, I said, anyone who writes to me and says they want my first real personal development book, which is just a list of public speaking tips, still a lot of good tips there, I will email it to you at absolutely no charge. So all you have to do is send me an email, tj@tjwalker.com. Sai, you should get that within about an hour or so after the show is over today. I do think that whether you want to be a consultant, a trainer, a public relations executive, a thought leader in any industry, doesn't matter if it's nuclear research, physics, or a body language expert, if you want to be seen as a leader, you need to write. Now, it doesn't have to be actually you sitting there typing. Some of you hate to type. I don't particularly like to type that much. I do dictate at least 500 words a day as soon as I get up on some habits-related issue, but I also have to type. The beauty of writing is it clarifies your thinking, it helps you get better organized, and it creates a package for your thoughts that can be distributed and shown around the world even when you're not there, even when you're not face to face. One author I wanted to talk to you about today and share you some of his insights on writing is James Altucher. He's written a number of best-selling books, including Choose Yourself. He has self-published most of his successful books. And to me is a perfect example of kind of the modern entrepreneurial writer expert. He didn't go to Columbia Graduate School of Journalism, but he is an interesting, insightful writer. He posted a blog post in the last couple of days on his secrets for writing. I've linked to this in my show notes. If you go to the YouTube page and look at the description for today's show, you will see a link to this as well. By the way, regarding his credentials, he's written 22 books over the last 20 years, many of them bestsellers. Some of them have made a great deal of money. He shares his top 10 secrets for effective writing. His first one, coffee. He likes to drink a lot of coffee. So he has a very specific routine. He says, I start writing on my third cup of coffee for the day. Does this mean you should drink coffee if you don't drink coffee? No. The point is he has a set routine that he's comfortable with, that he likes doing, that works for him. You've got to figure out a routine that works for you. The important thing is not the cup of coffee. The important thing is he writes every day. Now, I have to confess, there have been times in my life when I didn't write much. I've only recently gotten back into the habit of writing every single day, and I am so happy that I did, because I know I don't ever have to write more than I'm writing now, 500 words a day, and I'll have enough for a couple of books every year for the rest of my life. I'll have more than enough content for another half a dozen online courses every year for the rest of my life if I just keep up that output. You don't have to write 5,000 words, 10, 20 pages a day. If you just write a little bit, it adds up. He has other routines. He says, reading. It's very hard to write well if you don't read a lot. There are exceptions. Gary Vaynerchuk famously doesn't read books, and yet he's written 5 New York Times best-selling books. But reading, he likes to read. He says, I tend to read dirty realism. And he has all sorts of authors he recommends: Raymond Carver, Miranda July, I'm not familiar with her, James Frey, a bit of a controversy with him, but certainly a good writer, Charles Bukowski. These are some of his famous writers that he enjoys. The next tip he shares, he likes to start at the same time every day. So he wakes up at 4:30 a.m. every day. Does this mean if you wake up at 4:30 a.m. every day, you'll be a great writer? No. If you don't fall asleep till midnight, does it mean you should wake up at 4:30 every day to write? No. He's simply sharing with you his routine. Now, it's been said about a lot of the most famous and influential avant-garde creators, artists in the world, that they tend to have extremely ordinary, boring daily habits. It's hard to imagine anything more boring than getting up at 4:30 every day, although I shouldn't be that critical considering I get up at 5:30 most days, but I don't use an alarm clock. You might not aspire to get up at 4:30 every day. The point is, do something that's regular. Have a set routine. The number one habit of great writers and writers who sell a lot of books and have a lot of influence is they write every single day. I know a number of you, because you've told me, if you are a trainer, a teacher, an instructor, a consultant, are you writing every day? If not, why not? I want to hear from you. Please post on TikTok, on Facebook, on YouTube, whatever platform you are on. I want to hear from you. Are you writing? The number one excuse I hear from consultants and others who aren't writing is, oh, I'd love to, I don't have time. Writing is likely to be the absolute most lucrative way you could ever spend your time if you do it right. Not just because of best-selling books, but because those ideas help build your brand so you attract more clients and you can charge more money and make more money. Let's go to some of our friends on TikTok. Jay Silcone writes, journaling or just thoughts? I am a fan of journaling. There are a lot of extraordinarily successful people, Tim Ferriss being one of them, who recommends the first 10 minutes of every day, just write in your own journal just for you. Now, they recommend longhand. A number of people recommend longhand. There's a very famous book from about 1980, The Artist Way, which really popularized this concept of journaling, daily papers, writing every single day. It's really a conversation for yourself. I do journaling every day. I take kind of an abbreviated cheater's way of doing it, to be brutally honest with you. I will write a journal every day, thoughts, but I tend to focus them narrowly and have just a couple of sentences that really sum up what I think is the most interesting thing going on in my life and anything I want to share to myself. It's a good part of the process. Many famous authors do it because it kind of primes the pump. It's a fantastic habit. The more you write, the more you write. Great speakers will tell you you should speak as often as possible because the more you speak and the better you get. So at some point, writing is a skill. People who play great tennis in professional tournaments also practice every single day. They don't just play in tournaments. So yes, I do think journaling is important. Now, I also do a modified version where I am writing typically as a part of going through my to-do list every single day. So part of what I write every single morning, my main journaling thoughts for myself, big ideas for the day. But I have another item on my checklist where I write what I feel the most gratitude about in my life every single day. So that's a part of the journaling process. I also write down what is the one question I would like my brain to be thinking about all day and all night as I sleep. That's a part of it. So if you cobble together all the little things I write down every day, it would probably be about 10 or 15 minutes of journaling. So in that sense, I do journal on a daily basis. Some of what I write every day are things like question of the day. It's a question for me, but it's also a question I share with you, those of you who spend time, if you go to my Facebook page or Twitter or any place else. You don't see that on TikTok because TikTok doesn't allow for text. So I'm a big fan of journaling. Even if you don't ever want to be a writer where you share your writing to the rest of the world, it's a great way of just getting your own thoughts out. And there's something therapeutic. If something's bothering you, to write it all down, then it's kind of out of your mind and you can be even more productive focusing on what is most important to you. So for all those reasons, I'm a big fan of journaling as a daily habit. They are part of my research for you, and just part of my own interest is reading so many books about great habits of great leaders. And it doesn't matter what industry they're in, what sort of thought leader they are. I'm amazed at how often, by my own rough estimate, 90% of the time, really wildly successful people, thought leaders, journal every day. They may call it their diary, they may call it first draft of their memoirs, but they're writing every single day about stuff they want. They're not worried about other people criticizing them because often it's just for them. Now, as I was talking about in the previous hour, for my advice to Cy and others who are consultants, experts, trainers, authors, is if you want to be more successful, if you want to have more clients, if you want to be able to charge more revenue, there's a certain habit you need to create, and that is the habit of creating content on a daily basis. Not just writing, but also video and audio. The reason people don't do that is they're afraid of criticism. Guess what? It's a very real fear to have because people do criticize. And I'm not speaking from an abstraction here. I'll share it with you as recently as yesterday. Here is an email that I received. In fact, it was from one of my friends on TikTok. Let me just share with you this. This is from someone named Flo1980. This was in response to a video I posted yesterday on TikTok. And Flo writes, "Dude, you really think you should be giving beauty tips?" Clearly implying I'm too ugly to be talking about anything related to appearance. Now, let me tell you the backstory here. What I noticed yesterday is there was a trending hashtag on TikTok for beauty tips. I don't think of myself as a beauty expert. I don't think of myself as beautiful. But I do give tips for people on how to be healthier. And if you are healthier, generally you're going to look better. So I figured here's a chance for me to reach a broader audience, help people with habits that can make them healthier. So I said simply, and this was in 15 seconds, here are 2 beauty tips you don't want to hear. Something like, here are the 2 beauty tips you don't want to hear. Number 1, turn off all screens, including your cell phone. Don't look at any screens 1 hour before you go to bed. Tip number 2, go to bed 8.5 hours before you have to wake up, so you don't need an alarm clock. 15 seconds. And that had 1,000 people watch it. Actually more than that. That one had 4,000 people watching it. hundreds and hundreds of likes, lots of comments. So I frankly was pleased with that. It did get one negative comment, and that is from, as I mentioned, our good friend Flo 1980. So here's how I handled that. I just kind of laughed, to be honest with you. And I was curious about something. I had a suspicion, because I've noticed in the past that people who take the time to critique the physical appearance of someone else, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, any place else, because this has happened for decades with me, even back when I had a lot more hair and fewer wrinkles, I have noticed that anyone who criticizes someone else online typically is too afraid to show any of their own content. They're always people who have created nothing every single time. But I figured, you know what? I could be wrong. Maybe this time it's from someone who is really beautiful, who creates a lot of great beauty tips. So I clicked on the icon for, and please don't go right on Flo and criticize him. That's not my intent at all. I don't think he was being malicious. But I clicked on it, and sure enough, this was someone who had produced 0 videos and had 3 followers. So that puts things in perspective. When people are criticizing you, your YouTube video, your Facebook video, your piece of artwork, whatever it is you do, listen, because they may have some credibility. I would have been especially interested if Flo had said, you know, your advice is bad because blah, blah, blah. If he had given me something specific about my advice. But clearly he was just kind of making fun of the fact that TikTok is a platform where there are a lot of young, good-looking people. And here's some old guy who isn't Brad Pitt or George Clooney giving people beauty tips. Seems a bit odd. Okay, I admit it may seem a bit odd, but I think my advice was sound. I'm glad I gave it. I'm glad I reached thousands of people with my tips. I'm glad hundreds and hundreds of them expressed approval. And basically one person said something that was not overwhelmingly positive, and he may have just been trying to be funny. Here's why this is important. If you want to be successful as a thought leader, a writer, an expert, a communicator, a video producer, you can't let the criticism bother you. All things being equal, would I love it if just every email that came in said, wow, TJ, you're so good looking. I just love every aspect of your hair and your face. Would I love? Sure. Not going to happen. But it doesn't have to happen. So part of being successful, I believe, in this day and age, is building a habit, and it is a habit, of having a thick skin. Not letting occasional criticism bother you. Especially if it's about something you can't really control. I can't really control that I'm not young and beautiful. Hey, I've got vanity. I'm trying to look my best, but no one's going to confuse me for one of the Helmsley brothers that are so popular these days. No one's going to confuse me for that, but that's okay. So if it's holding you back, this idea that you feel like you need to lose 10 pounds or you need to get Botox, and people have all these excuses as to why they can't start their YouTube channel, why they can't do Facebook Live. And I'm telling you, it's all a bunch of nonsense. What's keeping you back? I appreciate you watching me today, and I appreciate those of you giving comments, giving feedback. But what's keeping you from doing your own live show on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram? What's holding you back from posting, if not a daily video about your area of expertise on YouTube or Facebook? What's holding you back from doing it at least weekly? So often it's not about, oh, I need to buy the perfect camera or I need to get a better lighting grid. Part of it is just being afraid of criticism. Now, I have more criticism that I received. Actually, this one, I don't know if it is criticism. It's mildly amusing. I'm now getting this probably 3 or 4 times a week. Here is the post I'm getting. This one came from someone called Tuxie1 in one of the online forums. Are you Steve Jobs? Now, I'm getting that comment a lot. And once or twice I've written back to people saying, do you mean the young, good-looking Steve Jobs in the 1970s with the perfect head of hair, who was the picture of health? Or do you mean the old, bald, feeble, diseased Steve Jobs, a year or so before he died? No one's responded to that comment. I think I know which one it's closer to that they are thinking I look like. Part of it is, I guess, sometimes I wear a turtleneck, and at some point, all old white men who are balding who wear a turtleneck who are relatively thin kind of all look the same. So I'm not offended by it at all. And hey, he's a fascinating guy. I certainly don't mind being compared to one of the most successful innovators and creators of the 20th and 21st century. So again, I could be insulted. I choose to look on the bright side and look at it as, okay, positive comparison to someone fantastic who's aspirational. Whatever it is, you need your own technique for dealing with criticism. You could decide, I just will instantly delete, I won't look at it. That could be one way. What I don't recommend is trying to argue with people and tell them that they are wrong. If someone doesn't like the way you look, they're not wrong. That's just their feeling. You can't please everyone, and you will go crazy if you try. So one habit of successful people, and I think emotionally well-grounded people, is they're completely at peace with the idea that not everybody's going to love us. That's okay. I'm TJ Walker. I want to thank you for joining me today. We have a lot of good stuff left coming up today on today's program, plus your questions, your comments, your thoughts. We are open for questions and suggestions, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, whether you are watching on TikTok. Commenter has joined us. Real Talk 898 has joined us on TikTok. And commenter says, fellow innovator and creator. Well, glad you're there. And I'm very happy that you're actually using the label of creator. To me, that is the best thing you can be in the modern world. There's never been a better time to be a creator. People sometimes ask me, TJ, have all the good habits, getting a good night's sleep, writing all the good habits. What do you think is the foundational habit that would drive other good habits? To me, it's being a creator. If you're creating stuff, doesn't matter if it's artwork or software, on a daily basis, pretty much you've already told me 100 other of your habits are in alignment and working for you. So commenter, what is it you create? I'm always interested in what other creators are doing, and certainly feel free to promote, give a shout out to any of your recent creations, whether it's a book or anything else. I'd love to hear from you. What is it you create? Please share that with us, and I would love to hear it from you. While you're thinking about that, I wanted to put a spotlight on someone I mentioned earlier. I do think he is a fabulous creator and really a role model for anyone who aspires to media success in the 2020s. His name is Gary Vaynerchuk. I've listed in the show description that you can find on my YouTube course or description for the video, a video from Gary Vaynerchuk. And it's simply entitled, A Mega Blog Post Answering 100 Questions from Fans. A lot of times people say, well, TJ, I'd love to make content video, but I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. Be lazy. Don't sit there and write out scripts for 10 hours. Just answer the most obvious questions that your clients and customers already ask you on a daily basis. And that is one of the best places for creating content. So let's go to commenter. He's now written in. I'm a mindset shifter and I own a media agency. Okay, intriguing. A mindset shifter is certainly something that sounds appealing to me, because that's essentially what I'm trying to do, is help people change their mindset from one set of habits and how to adapt stronger habits that help them on a regular basis. Website, apps, and digital advertising. And it says CC means Chris Cola. Okay, sounds very intriguing. So would love to hear more about that from time to time. And I know it's a bit restrictive on the TikTok app. If you want to post for us a link to your website, you can do so there, or you can flesh out in even a little more detail on our Facebook page. And by the way, if you are on TikTok or any of the other platforms, would love for you at some point to stop off by our Facebook page, and that's TJ Walker. You go to facebook.com/TJ Walker Speak to Influence is the actual URL. But if you just type in TJ Walker Personal Development, you'll find my public page there. And by liking that page, you will often be the first to get free passes to my latest courses, updates on some of my books. I tend to give out a lot of free content to the Facebook fans and followers there. So if you are watching on Instagram or TikTok, continue watching whatever platform is your favorite. But at some point, kind of amble on over to the Facebook page, because I do give some extra goodies out there. So commenter also writes, it's ChristopherCola.com and acceleratedmg.com. And feel free to post that on other sections. At some point, we're going to have all the comments in one place for our show. So unfortunately, our Facebook friends can't see that. If anyone reaches out, make sure and say you saw it on TJ Walker. Great, thanks. I'm not actively looking for advertisers or sponsors, but this is the way that sort of thing happens. So I'm happy for you to be planting those seeds, and ideally we can do some cross-pollination. It's exciting times to be in the media. There's so much media growth, so many changes. I was struck by an article in the New York Times, a traditional old media outlet, hundreds of years old, earlier this week, and it was written by an author who basically said it's the end of possibilities for young creative people to come to New York. And it talked about the passing of a journalist and author, Elizabeth Wurtzel, I believe is how you pronounced her name. She famously wrote a book, Prozac Nation, became sort of the poster child for a young, angst-filled 20-something. This was more than 30 years ago. She unfortunately passed away from breast cancer within the last week, and she had basically lost her ability to support herself as an author, had gone to law school, worked at a law firm, that didn't work out, and died at a very unfortunate age. But the author of this story in the New York Times was lamenting how expensive New York City is, how it's impossible for people to just come here, get a nice book contract, get a cushy job as an editor, continue writing, have nice dinner parties and have nice cocktail parties for fellow creative types the way things used to be 25, 35 years ago. And I thought, wow, that is horribly misguided. To me, this is the golden age for creators. There's never in the history of the world been more people making more money from their creative pursuits than in 2020, than specifically January 13th, 2020. There's never in the history of the world been more people making more money through the daily habit of creating something. Journalistic, writing, speaking, creating art. What is different about 2020 is it's not concentrated in the hands of a few billionaires who own a few newspapers and a whole bunch of magazines, who can then pay a bunch of editors $500,000 a year and pay for their expense accounts to go to the Four Seasons for 3 martini lunches and pay for their vacation home. That part is gone. And yes, New York City is expensive. Guess what? You don't have to live in New York City any longer to practice the habit of daily creation. You can practice that anywhere in the world as long as you have a cell phone, or as long as you have one of these, an iPad. You can create. I know firsthand, I have competition worldwide. When I started my public speaking training business, media training business, I was competing, frankly, with other people from New York City. And about 10 years ago, certainly 5 years ago, I would go on Amazon and see, wow, there's some guy just destroying me on Amazon with public speaking books. Did a little research. He lives in Tanzania, eating my lunch on Amazon with his books. You can live anywhere. You can create anywhere. And that is the beauty of the modern media world and living in 2020. That's why the habit of creating daily is so important, because now you can distribute it. You don't have to just be a full-time journalist for the New Yorker magazine. Let's go to the comments from Facebook. Cy writes, thanks for accepting my friend request. Yes, happy to do that. It's my pleasure to meet you, sir. You are my inspiration and you are my guru and my mentor in my life. Wow. Well, Cy, thank you so much for saying that. I gladly accept that and want to be gracious about it. But I also want you and others to realize the real value that I think I provide is not in being your guru, but in teaching you how to be your own guru. The reason I'm here, as some of you heard me talk about last week, is I've had a lifetime of experience helping individuals influence audiences, public speaking audiences, media audiences. And it occurred to me that the most important audience you'll ever speak to is yourself. So many of us go through life saying, well, I'm no good, or I deserve to be second place, or I don't deserve real love or a nice home. We tell ourselves these things, and then it becomes our reality. Henry Ford famously, and I realize he was an anti-Semite, okay, but Henry Ford once famously said, whether you believe you can do something or not, it's true. You're right. Now, not everything is that simple, but what you tell yourself does have profound influence. Now, the unique added value I provide is I've created a new system where you speak to yourself. You essentially do a selfie using a cell phone, and you tell yourself what you want your life to be. You tell yourself what habits you want to do on a daily basis. I used to have a problem where I just spent too much time reading news. I could read 2-3 hours a morning, especially on weekends, just public policy, political news. Didn't get me anywhere. I tell myself every day for the last year in an audio, TJ, you limit yourself to no more than 30 minutes of news consumption in the morning. I tell myself that in an audio every day. I have a little checklist where I put on my checklist, did I do that every day? And you know what? I've cured myself of this problem of spending too much time reading news every day through this Selfie Speak audio. So that's what I need. You might not have a problem with that, Cy. So what I'm hoping is you use my techniques to become your own guru, because you know what your dreams are more than anyone else. You know what your aspirations are. I'm simply here helping you use tools more effectively that you already have. You already have a cell phone. And what I'm good at is helping you use these tools in a more focused way. That's what I do in my latest course on habits. And this is the complete course for positive daily habits. You can find it on Udemy, and it's in the show notes from last week as well. But if you just go to udemy.com and type in habits plus TJ Walker, you'll see the course. It's typically on sale for between $10 and $20. And just as of the last couple days is one of the top 5 sellers in that whole genre. So I think you will enjoy that if you're not already in the course. But Cy, thanks so much for the kind words. I do appreciate it. Marceau, do we have another comment or two on Facebook? I thought I saw one below that, but if I'm mistaken.
It's your TJ Walker training page.
Okay.
Keep to it.
So it looks
It's
like
on there,
Chris wrote in. Was it Chris Kuhn wrote in to say hello? Chris, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate your thoughts. And do we have Maja? Yeah, Maja has written in. Hi, TJ. I have such a problem figuring out what could be interesting to say to potential viewers. I actually find it hard to find something that would be helpful and not selfish. Well, Maja, the fact that you're even thinking about other people tells me you're not that selfish because you're thinking about other people. Truly selfish people only think about themselves. So it's good that you're thinking about that. The number one piece of advice I have for you, experiment. Try different topics. Try different formats. That's what we do here every day. I try some things work, some things don't. It's an experiment. Nobody really knows. I mean, there's a famous saying I think, quoted to Jack Warner in Hollywood in the 1930s. Nobody knows anything about anything. Or nobody knows nothing about what, and he was referring to what movie would be a hit, what movie would be a flop. And I think the same is true with social media today and live streaming. Nobody really knows what's going to work. At some point, you just have to take a risk, jump in, see what works. Now, there's this fundamental debate. People go back and forth. What's more important, quality versus quantity? Certainly, it's possible to do a live stream 24 hours a day, and it's just you sleeping. Or a test pattern. Well, that's a lot of quantity. No one would find value in that, presumably. There's also a rule where you could do one great 2-minute video once a year, but it almost doesn't matter how good that is. It's just not enough content. There has to be a balance. I'm a big believer in the principle that your quality is partially defined by your quantity. And Gary Vaynerchuk famously espouses this view too, which is if you want the best quality of content for your live streams, for other social media, then you need more quantity. Because when you put enough quantity out there, you get highly specific metrics. You get data. I mean, the beauty of Facebook, it's bad for privacy experts or for people who are most concerned with privacy, but it's great for creators because you know exactly what the market thinks. It's not like doing a television show 30 years ago and you're waiting 9 months later for the Nielsen ratings. You know almost in real time, certainly within a day, what do people like. Sometimes it may be a topic that you thought was the least interesting, got the most views on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Sometimes, this has happened to me, you'll do something and you think, wow, this is the greatest thing ever, this is fantastic, I have so many brilliant insights, and it is your worst performing video. You just have to try. All I can tell you is something beats nothing. A single day goes by that you did not put a video, you basically failed that day to make any connections. You got a big zero. So a day when you make a video or you post a blog or you put out some idea or you create a podcast and you get even one viewer, one listener, one reader, that's more than you would have gotten if you had done nothing. Now, I'm not suggesting you spend 5 hours a day writing 20 blog posts for one reader, but also realize, depending on what industry you're in, sometimes you are better off with 50 visitors a month to your website than 500,000. There are plenty of people in the world who just rebroadcast and repost titillating Hollywood news, celebrity gossip, and they may have 500,000 views, 500,000 visitors to their website, but they make almost no money because there's no real connection, there's no value added, there's no real relationship with the audience. Whereas you could do a blog that's just specific to the hedge fund industry, and let's say be more specific, hedge fund industries that are focused on investments in sustainable energy. A really, really tiny niche. You might write about that every day. have 10 people come a month and read it, but it's the right 10 people. It's the 10 people you would pay almost anything for to get to meet with one-on-one. And now they are coming to you. Now they feel like they know you. Now they trust you. Now they may be reaching out to you. So that's what I want you to think of when you are trying to figure out, is this interesting or not? You can also do polls. You can put something on a Facebook page saying, I'm going to do a live show tomorrow. Here are the 5 topics I'm thinking of. Just let me know, which one do you think is most interesting to you? Marceau, can we go back to her comment 1 second? I want to make sure I didn't miss any nuance there. Again, that's from Maja. Part of it... no, I just wanted to see the comment from Maja again. Maja, don't be afraid to ask. I'm going to ask you. Tell them, and sometimes what you hear stings. But Maja, I want to know, what have I said to you that you thought was interesting and useful today that you possibly might want more of? And then tell me what you didn't find interesting. What would you like me to do less of? A part of what makes good shows in the long run is they get just a tiny little bit better every single time. Oprah Winfrey, her show was different at the end than it was the first month she was on. She got better at it. She got better at figuring out what her audience wanted and how it connected with what she wanted. So, Maja, if you don't mind telling me, don't be afraid of hurting my feelings. You might say, TJ, don't tell us about people who have written comments criticizing your appearance. It seems undignified. I don't know, but you can tell me whatever you think, because it is real, it is true for you. I might make a change with my programming, I might not, but I listen to all criticism and to all thoughts. Sometimes it just takes a while. Forgive me for giving him as a reference so often, but he is such a luminary in the field of social media. Gary Vaynerchuk famously says, when he started his first online program, TV Wine Library, this was about 15 years ago, that he had basically no audience for 6 months. He was talking to himself. Now, he was not doing that show live. He was recording the show, 15-minute show, every night, posting it, and received virtually no interaction, not much of a response at all for 6 months. So whatever you do, Maja, when it comes to your creation, don't be too disappointed if someone's really critical. But the worst criticism of all when it comes to your creation is not nasty criticism, harsh criticism, criticism about your looks, your face, your body. The worst criticism of all, being ignored, having no audience at all. The proverbial crickets. That's the worst criticism of all. And then you have to just experiment. Not every experiment will work. 4 or 5 years ago, I started a daily podcast. I had guests, production values, fancier audio. I did a daily podcast every day for a year just on communication, public speaking, media training issues. And after a year, I had to concede. I failed. I could not find an audience. I have had more responses, emails, messages, likes, comments the very first day of this habit influencer show than in an entire year of podcast about public speaking and communication. So I appreciate those of you who have said nice words about me, but it's not because I'm just great at everything. It's because I haven't been afraid to fail. And I've tried a lot of things that failed. And now I know what not to work. Doesn't make me Thomas Edison, who famously failed at 10,000 attempts to make a light bulb. But I have failed at a lot of different radio shows, TV shows, social media ventures, websites. And I use all of that knowledge ideally to make this experience better for you and to create something that is meaningful. Let's check in with our friends. We have folks watching on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, as well as on TikTok. Joining us, well, we mentioned that the Cussing Christian has been with us. Great name, by the way. And I appreciate all the folks who joined us today. We have, it looks like Ingles Vlog says, "Hi TJ, what advice would you give me a content strategy?" Well, it depends on what niche you're in. If you're still with us, if we didn't lose you, what is your subject matter? One content strategy, as I was mentioning about Gary Vaynerchuk earlier, is just have a video where you answer every single question that any customer, client, prospect would ever have for you. Now, if you're an artist and you don't have customers, then just questions other art students might give you. Catalog every single basic idea you have. Try to catalog all of your insights. If you can make them flashier, more interesting, more exciting, all the better. But don't wait for that. My most successful YouTube video of all time is a simple talking head video where I basically tell people everything I know about media training, or the most important elements in media training. It is 1 hour long, and it's had tens and tens and tens of thousands of views. It gets more than 1,000 views every single month, and it's been up for 5 years. And it was basically just a data dump of me sharing what I know in that industry. That's one way. Now you can also go to the other extreme and make a tight little niche, one topic, one fact, one message at a time. That's essentially my strategy with you on TikTok. TikTok, the primary length for a video is 15 seconds. So every single day on the TikTok platform, I do 1, sometimes 2 or 3 videos where I just talk about one idea. 15 seconds is enough time to give people one tip, one thought to maybe help them get a little bit better. That's a great way because people don't seem to punish you for not having slick production values. I'm just holding my cell phone, speaking for 15 seconds on TikTok, and in the last month I've had 150,000 views, and that's spending zero money on it, very little time, and I'm reaching people. There's nothing I'm doing that you can't do. So when it comes to content, ask yourself, if you could sit in a room with someone interested in what you do, if they could ask you one question, how would you answer? Just record that video. If you can't do it in less than 3 minutes, that's okay. Post that video on Facebook. If you need 10 minutes, post that on YouTube. If you can do it in 15 seconds, post it on TikTok. Ideally, you can do 3 different videos of different lengths. Start getting your content out there. Something beats nothing. One habit of wildly successful content creators is they don't wait for something to be perfect. They are not perfectionists. Perfectionists, I find, are all the same. You go to their YouTube page, their Facebook page, their TikTok page, look at their content, it always says no videos, nothing uploaded, nothing to share. To me, there's nothing perfect about that. True, they don't have a lot of criticism saying, oh, your lighting was bad, your audio wasn't perfect, I don't like your graphics. They don't have criticism, but they don't have anything else. They don't have connection, they haven't helped anyone. So please keep that in mind and try to figure out what it is you can do. That's the ultimate content strategy. Now, you may have a particular subject matter where it's critically important that you are on some specialty site for music because you're a music producer. I don't know enough about that, but what I can tell you is whatever your niche is, there are going to be plenty of general sites and general places that people who will know about what you do, even though they don't know you, would want to learn more. So build the habit of creating content daily and sharing it with the world. When you stop doing that, you stop growing. If you continue to do that, more and more opportunities come your way. Marcel, were you going to say something there? I thought I heard my,
No,
I thought I heard my producer.
my mute was off.
By the way, some of you may be looking at this and say, what's going on behind TJ? Because you looked real, but now the fireplace is frozen. So here's what it is. This is my actual living room. But we are now shooting the show live each day in my little TV studio on the first floor of my home. So this is just a video. Now it came back. It somehow seems to have a mind of its own where the video image, and this again, this is just a TV right here. I'm standing just 2 inches in front of a TV monitor. So I want to be transparent with you because what I don't want is for you to think, oh wow, TJ has this big, giant, huge TV studio and $100,000 worth of lights, so I could never do my own live stream. This is just this is like a 12-year-old TV behind me. It's just a, I don't know, a 42-inch TV. You can find these at garbage dumps these days because TVs are now so cheap. And then you can put any video loop behind you if you want to do a live stream or a video. I want to stress, you don't have to be me. Not everyone has to have their mug in videos all day long and shouting at people or talking to people. You can create in your own way. Your way may be making paintings, maybe making sculpture, maybe creating the most incredibly tasty dinners anyone has ever tasted because it's a fusion of Mexican and Chinese food. I don't know what your niche is. I'm agnostic on what platform you use, what medium you use. It could be digital art, it could be a paintbrush, it could be a hammer and chisel, or it could be you speaking on video. What I am in favor of is you finding some metaphorical paintbrush and canvas that you're comfortable with creating on a daily basis. I do believe that is such a foundational habit, and that when you do that, it puts you in a better mood for everything else. There's something very fulfilling as a human being to create. When I'm finished with this show today, I'm going to be feeling really good because I feel like I've helped people, I've enjoyed it, I've learned from many of you, and that's what makes it fun, and that's why it's such an important habit. If I've missed your comments, feel free to post them again. I see several have come in that I perhaps missed on TikTok. And also I noticed that I got knocked off because my battery was running low on the cell phone, so it temporarily kicked me off each time. So I see that PSPNL has joined us, and the Wax Master has joined us, and several others. So if you have any questions about habit acquisition, personal development on TikTok or any other platform, please post them. Let me know. I would love to hear from you. And by the way, I will toss out that same offer I gave earlier. Anyone who writes to me today, just because one of you brought it up, I will send to you at absolutely no charge my very first personal development book, which was 1,001 Ways to Wow the Media and Speaking Audience. It's just a book full of tips and tricks on how to communicate more effectively. And I think while many of the tips do stand the test of time, the other value of the book is you can tell yourself, wow, this is so simple, an idiot could do it. Well, it's true. There's nothing preventing you from creating a simple book where it's just a list of tips to help people in your industry. We're coming up on the top of the hour. I didn't get to a number of the top stories I was hoping to focus on, but I do want to share with you just briefly. This was from a website that I go to periodically. It's earlytorise.com. And this relates to a topic we addressed in the top of the first hour, which is the habits of financially successful. This was an article specifically about 7 habits millionaires have. Number 1, they plan out their days, weeks, and months. Number 2, they delegate aggressively and focus on their area of genius. By the way, if you want the whole list, go to the show notes in the YouTube page for this show today, and you can check out the whole article yourself. Number 3, they know their magic time and max it out. By that I mean most people are productive, let's say 9 a.m. to noon. They're not productive 18 hours a day. For you, it could be midnight to 3 a.m., but there's only a window for most people, 2, 3, at most 4 hours, when they are really most productive. 4, they take massive, imperfect action. They are not perfectionists. They don't wait till everything is perfect. They ship. Seth Godin famously said, real artists ship. They don't just sit there and fiddle and keep it in their closet. They ship it out to the public. Number 5, they flex their decisiveness muscle. Number 6, they are control freaks. I realize that sounds like it's opposite of not being perfectionists, but they are controlling what really matters the most and what they want to control. And number 7, they have a proven strategy for success and often a mentor to help them. They're not trying to do something from scratch. They at least have a model of someone who has done what they want to do, or if they're doing something in a completely new field, they are following the same steps that someone else did in another field where they see it as comparable. These are 7 habits that millionaires have. And if the term millionaire being tossed about seems cheesy to you, okay, it seems a little cheesy to me as well. Substitute the term millionaire for wildly successful person. I'm TJ Walker, and I want you to be wildly successful on your terms, not just in wealth, but in happiness and relationships, and with your creative energies and how you feel about your life. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you again tomorrow.
This is a Chucky Beat production.